A friend of mine, Heinrich from Golan Krav Maga, reached out to me to do a piece on the use of knives for self-defense and more particularly on carrying one since some of his students asked about it. I'm Stan Bezuidenhout and I come to you from sunny Florida in the USA, where we are currently also trapped by the COVID-19 lockdown and pandemic. But our thoughts go out to all of you back home as you fight not only COVID-19 but also the physical dangers you face there. I will address this issue in the context of the legal framework in South Africa, but I can imagine that similar laws would probably prevail in other countries. In South Africa, many people are confused about old laws, relating specifically about the carrying of knives and the old issue about the size of the knife you are allowed to carry. Some people still believe that a 10 centimeter rule applies, or that it has to do with the size of your hand. While there was such kind of an act in the old South Africa, this was replaced by the so-called Dangerous Weapons Act, or Act 15 of 2013. There is no reference or stipulation regarding the size of a knife or ownership anymore, and no mention to specifically the carrying of knives. To start, the Act describes a dangerous weapon as any object other than a firearm capable of causing death or inflicting serious bodily harm if it were used for unlawful reasons. But it goes further to state that the Act does not apply to things like using a dangerous weapon in the execution of your duties. Think about a security guard with a baton or a taser. It also does not apply to religious practices, but I have no personal idea of what religion would involve a dangerous weapon, but it's in there. Also, things like cultural activities, lawful sports, recreation or entertainment is included. Those are things like making movies, or where it is part of a legitimate collection, display or exhibition. When the Act gets specific and instructs the following, it states, and I will quote, "Any person who is in possession of any dangerous weapon that raises reasonable suspicion that they intend to use it for an unlawful purpose is guilty of an offense." This comes under the possibility of a fine or even imprisonment not exceeding 3 years. But what unlawful purposes are is something that must be interpreted very specifically as well, and the Act covers that. The Act considers the place and time where you are found with your weapon. So a person who is at a football game with an axe or a machete, or perhaps even a huge knife, might be considered unnatural and possibly even suspected of acting unlawfully. Also, the behavior is covered in the Act. If the person is at a show or event carving wooden sculptures with a chainsaw, they would probably not be seen as acting unlawfully. But if they entered a bank with a toy gun, there would be some serious questions. The Act also addresses the manner in which a weapon is carried. So, if you are walking down the road, going to a protest march, wielding a machete, flailing it around above your head, you would likely face scrutiny, such as we've seen at the Marikana incident. The Act specifically states that the possession of the dangerous weapon in relation to any drug dealing, organized crime, gang association, or any other criminal activity would attract attention and probably get you arrested or charged. Then the Act luckily includes specific reference to other relevant factors, including the explanation the person may provide for the possession. But it goes on to say that it does not place you under obligation to explain your possession. So in short, you need to remain aware of where you are, when you have your knife with you, what you intend to do with it, and why you have it, if you decide to have one. It's therefore not, in my mind, illegal to carry a knife. But keep the following in mind. If you are going to a bank or shop or a mall, a church even, and you carry a knife, they might deny you entry. If you want to carry a knife, conceal it. Have one that is big enough to be effective, but small enough not to attract undue attention. Get one that's easy to use, or perhaps a multifunction tool, so that you can present an alternative reason for carrying it if you are required to. Whether it's to eat biltong, to use as a daily tool, or to carve wood, that's your choice. But carrying a knife for self-defense specifically might be subject to confusion if you are confronted on it.
Well, what do we have here, huh? Why would you be carrying a knife like this?
Hunting.
He says he uses it for hunting.
Hunting? What do you hunt? Elephant?
Assuming that your right to personal defense, using whatever means necessary, is satisfied, your weapon of choice is effectively irrelevant anyway. In that case, whether it is a knife, a firearm, or even a bottle would become irrelevant, and the reason for your actions would be scrutinized more closely. That being said, most effective weapons are what are called force multipliers. They make you more powerful or can disarm your attacker, overcome them, or disable him to stop the attack. As far as the choice of weapons go, a knife is actually not a force multiplier at all, but rather a results determinator. It can guarantee a lot of bleeding, some injury, and if used very specifically, ultimately result in total disability. But it is often a slow process, since people will only become disabled totally when they lose consciousness, which is normally something that only happens when the oxygen supply to the brain is adequately reduced. Since knives can only cause two kinds of wounds, either slash or puncture wounds, they are often ineffective when it comes to the incapacitation of an attacker. To give you an idea of just how ineffective knives can be as weapons, a study in Philadelphia examined 4,122 patients taken to 8 Level 1 and Level 2 adult trauma centers between January 2003 and December 2007. The majority of patients in both groups, a total of 84.1%, had signs of life on delivery to the hospital, so they were not dead already. Of all the cases, 2,961 were transported by EMS and 1,161 by police. The overall mortality rate was 27.4%, so almost a third of them actually died. 77.9% of those that died suffered gunshot wounds. By comparison, only 22.1% died from stab wounds. Guns are around 4 times as effective at causing death or incapacitation than knives are. Since personal defense is built upon the objective of total incapacitation of your attacker, knives might be a less effective tool if your immediate safety is at stake. Of course, knives are very effective at intimidation, at least for some people, and as a deterrent as well. But we're talking about fighting for your life now, and not about eventually winning the fight. If you are going to use a knife for personal defense, I would recommend that you become very skilled at unarmed combat, very skilled at wound application, and very skilled at weapon retention. Target selection, or deciding where you apply the knife, is very hard to control under the full dynamics of combat. Often victims of stabbings are even unaware of being stabbed, something that I myself have actually experienced.
The knife wounds across 14-year-old Damar's body tell a horrifying tale. Just last month, he was chased down a busy road and stabbed 7 times.
When I got stabbed, I didn't know till I saw the blood onto my shoes and everything.
If you are in the group who thinks in terms of the danger of the knife, but who confuse it with the efficiency as a weapon, you do run the risk of getting a very unpleasant surprise. I hope this helps and informs those who ask the question, or those who are interested in using a knife as a possible choice for personal defense. Thanks for your time, and have a safe lockdown in South Africa. All of the best.